In today's video, we're going to perfect your D grace notes. Stay tuned.
Well, hello everybody, I'm Willis Bagpiper, and on this channel I make videos to make you a stronger and more confident piper. I also teach Skype and online lessons if you want more personalized instruction, but more on that later. The D grace note, one of the most critical grace notes in all of piping. My good friend and former pipe sergeant Peter Bailey pointed out that the D grace note is critical in so many aspects of piping. It makes the grip possible. It's present in Tara Lewis. It's the grace note that makes low hand doublings accessible. It's in tachums. It's kind of everywhere. So having it under control and properly played is very important.
In the description below, there's a link to the PDF document I have here. So go ahead, print this out, put it on a tablet, have it in front of you so you can follow along.
And the D grace note is the bottom pointer finger, and it is a single finger motion. If we are moving other fingers with the D grace note, it's when we're changing notes with it. So let's say we're going from G to A with a D grace note. You would lift the pinky and the pointer because that's coming up for the A. This is the D grace note though, by itself. It's just this finger. We want it nice and small. I don't want to say overly tight, but we certainly don't want it really big and tall. It's got to be quite small and quite crisp to do its job. So on the sheet here, we're going to start with just simple note changes with the D grace note, encompassing every possible note change that this grace note can do. That said, there's not that many. The D grace note's at the bottom kind of end of the chanter. You can only separate or change low G, A, B, and C with a D grace note. Anything above, well, D, you can't put a D grace note on. So this is going to be a relatively short exercise. Let's dive right on into this sheet right here. To start with that D grace note on low G, we're just going to have our D finger up in a low G position otherwise and lower that finger. And then, as we discussed just a minute ago, from low G to A with a D grace note, we're going to lift the pinky because we're going to the A, and the pointer because we're using that D grace note, and then boom, immediately close that pointer finger to get a crisp D grace note taking you from G to A. Try to lift them together. Don't let it have a run. That's the pinky coming up early. And you also don't want the grace note coming up early because you can kind of hear that too. Try to get them both up cleanly together and then thwack with that D grace note back down. To move on to the next note change, we're just going to head back down to low G. So that's just the D, finger up, and both down again. Now to go from low G to B, we're going to lift both the ring and the pinky along with that D grace note. So only the middle finger is covering a hole in the bottom as we make this change. Again, try to avoid the run. Try to get all three up together smartly. And then from B, back to low G, 1 up, 3 down. Remember, we want to keep that middle finger down as we're doing this change. It doesn't need to move, so we're not going to move it. Then low G, D grace note to C. In this case, we're going to go to an actual D position for just a second because the pinky doesn't have to move from low G to go to a C. And we do have to lift that D finger because of the D grace note. But again, as soon as it's up, we want to close it for a crisp, small D grace note sound. And then again, we're going to head right back down to low G. That means pointer finger up, everything down, smartly, cleanly together. So for line 2, we're going to start now with a D grace note on A and then do a D grace note to B. So again, from this position, we're going to lift, middle finger staying down. We're lifting the ring finger because A to B, that needs to come up. And again, with the D grace note. And we want these to come up together. This one can be rather hard to avoid that run. We don't want to hear that extra B creep in there before the D grace note. So just be mindful of these fingers coming up together and then boom, D grace note, smartly back down. And then again, we'll head back down, D grace note up, both fingers down, the pointer and the ring to go back down to the A. Now we're going to do a D grace note to C. This one's kind of crazy because you're going to actually lift the whole hand high because that's what you have to do. We're going to lift the ring and middle to go to the C, and then boom, that pointer finger's up for the D grace note, and yet we have not brought that pinky down. We're going to bring that down smartly with the D grace note. So there is a brief split second where no fingers are covering holes on the bottom hand. Again, try to avoid a run. All 3 up together, boom, and then in this case 2 down because the pinky needs to come down to play a proper C. Then again, heading back from C to A, we're again going to lift everything high, and then boom, 3 down to that low A. The next change is again with that D grace note to B, which we've already covered. So we're going to start right here on this B and do a D grace note to C. Again, we're going to be in that position right here with the 2 fingers up, because again, the middle finger is coming up for the C and the pointer finger coming up for that D grace note, and then thwack the pointer and pinky down to play a proper C. And we're almost done, people. We just have to head down C, both up, pinky and pointer to B. And just like that, that's every note change possible with D grace notes. So let's play those first 2 lines with the metronome. I have this set at 64. I just picked kind of a slowish speed. Find a speed that works for you, that you can do all of these changes cleanly and clearly. If when you try to apply a metronome, it's not good, clean, and clear, well, first, maybe work out the changes that are fuzzy to begin with without a metronome, and then find a speed. It can be slower than this, or you can play along with that metronome. Make sure that you can do these 2 lines good, clean, clear, and accurately before you move on to the rest of this exercise. Now moving on to the rest of this exercise, we're going to continue changing notes with grace notes, but we are also going to be separating notes with D grace notes, because one of the roles the D grace note plays in so many of our embellishments is that of separation. In the grip, in a doubling, in lots of places, we're going to use that D grace note to separate 2 notes of the same pitch. So we're going to practice that in 3 different rhythms here. First, with a round or even rhythm, where both notes, both the starting note and the note we're separating, are even in length. Then we'll do it pointed, where the first of the 2 notes is going to be long and the second one is going to be shorter. And then finally, in a snapped rhythm, where the first note is going to be short and the second note is going to be longer. As you can see here, the notes are in the same order as above, so we're not going to talk about the individual changes. We've already discussed them above. So I'm just going to play through these so you can hear how you can apply the D grace note to these exercises and get it under control. Ready, go. Your aim, your goal, is to try to make the D grace notes that you're changing notes with the same length as the D grace notes you're using to separate notes, and that all of them should sound percussive and small, not big and bloopy. We don't really want to hear the tonality of the D. We want to hear the percussive cha of the D instead.
And if you are enjoying this content, please think about giving the video a like, subscribing to the channel, and commenting below with any thoughts you might have. Thanks.
Let's move on now to the pointed version of the same one, where again, now the first note will be 75% of the beat, and the second note will be 25% of the beat. So, ready, go. If that's too quick, go ahead and slow it down. It does not have to be this quick. Let's try maybe at 50 beats per minute, and you might be able to hear maybe a little bit better the rhythms that are going on here. So ready? Go. Let's go to repeat it. Snap notes. We're going to start this one at 50 beats per minute. And remember, with a snapped rhythm, the first note in the pair is going to be the short one. Da-dum, 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 da-dum. So ready? Go. Once you can play these 3 rhythms, the round, the pointed, and the snapped with D grace notes, and you can get them all good, clean, and accurate, I suspect strongly that your D grace notes in the wild, the ones you find in tachums, the ones you find in grips, the ones you find in doublings, I suspect strongly you'll find they're stronger and more reliable. Thank you for watching, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, check out this video right here where we go over G grace notes with similar exercises, or this video right here where we talk about C grace notes and how they might benefit your playing. A special shout out to Ms. Carrie Tresek, my #1 supporter on Patreon. Go ahead, there's links to my Patreon below, and you can find out more about my lessons at www.commandyourbagpipe.com. I'm Matt Willis. Cheers.